I don't think we have any other option other than to be designing ecologically and trying to actively do as many low carbon measures as we can. The issue as architects is that almost everything that we do in some way uses energy, and so really the task is about trying to reduce the amount of energy that we use both in the buildings as we build them, but also how they will be used in the long term. We're in Greenhouse in Tottenham, North London. We were approached by Tom and Amandine about 4 years ago after they'd bought this site and were looking to create a new family home.
So when Tom and Amandine bought this plot, it had a very badly built 1980s house. We did look at ways that we might convert it or extend it, but it was in such terrible condition that we weren't able to do that. So what we were keen to do is to try to restore the site to what it historically would have been, which is a green landscape, which had greenhouses and orchards and market gardens, rather than the kind of brick house that was here previously.
Whilst the design has changed a little bit, I think the very first idea that we presented at the very first meeting is very much what you see today.
The form of the house was very simple. It was a block form, which gave us the most efficient structure in terms of thermal envelope, because it gives it a good form factor, which means that it maintains heat. And then in terms of materials, the cross-laminated timber frame was probably the most sustainable way we could build it structurally. The cross-laminated timber frame was grown and made in panels in Austria. And then once it was on site, it was assembled within about 10 days, which I think helped to expedite the construction process. We're working with quite a tight budget in this project, and we were very aware from the clients that there was no space to go over budget. So we had to get quite creative with the materials we were using. So there's quite a few areas in the building where we've sort of misused materials or used them in a slightly unusual way. So for example, the external cladding is a very, very low cost agricultural roofing sheet, which costs about £5 a square metre, made of recycled paper mixed with bitumen. The pavers outside were reclaimed breeze blocks bought off Gumtree, and there's a jesmonite infill on the top which are polished down to make them kind of a smooth paver, but they're quite beautiful for what they used to be. Also, the flooring upstairs is cork rubber, originally designed for industrial gaskets.
It's a kind of natural eco-pop combination with the natural materials, but then the kind of the poppiness of the green, and then obviously the curtains as well kind of add a sense of fun to the project.
When we first briefed Hayhurst and Co about the project, we tried to keep the brief as open as possible. There's a few reasons for that. One, I think creatively, it's nice to kind of let people run with it, with their own ideas. Secondly was budget. We knew our budget was very limited, and so we wanted to give you guys the biggest kind of free rein to use that budget efficiently.
I think the thing that was quite exciting for us in your brief is that you wanted something that was a bit innovative and a bit experimental, and Tom and Amandine were willing to take risks and do details and things that maybe we hadn't done before either. That's always a good brief to get as an architect, and quite fun. So this space we like to affectionately call the Tottenham Riad, and it has a number of purposes in terms of its design. Number one, it brings daylight in from above where side-facing windows wouldn't have been possible due to the neighbouring houses. It also serves to connect all of the upstairs bedrooms with the downstairs living space, so it's really kind of the heart of the home.
When you've got two young kids, it's pretty amazing. We kind of feel constantly connected to what they're doing without being on top of them. There's nothing they like more than running laps around the gallery space up there. I think we were a bit worried about noise and acoustics in the house, so you guys came up with the idea of using these curtains, which not only visually help to separate spaces, so we can pull this curtain across here and pull that curtain over there, it also really helps with the acoustics.
It's also to be able to separate this central space off as a kind of quite cool double height space, and also gives a bit of flexibility to divide off the living spaces.
And again, two young kids who are quite loud, we really noticed the benefit of having some soft furnishings. As we use the house in different ways, different little elements of fun kind of pop up, which I think is important in architecture. Often gets overlooked for the kind of seriousness of the practice. So this is the living room. This area feels really nice and hunkered down. We're 60 centimetres below the ground level here, so when we sit on the sofa, it feels really cosy.
And so part of the concept of the house of kind of feeling like you're living in the landscape, and rather than doing the kind of conventional contemporary thing, which is to have big wide open glass doors onto a patio, what we decided instead was to bring the planting close to the house, so you feel like the garden is part of the house or that you're part of the garden.
So now we're in the back garden. We designed this with a friend of ours who's an amazing garden designer called Ollie Allen. He really helped make a layout that gave us these little rooms and these really dense beds, but also had space for the kids to run around and play. He was very good at hiding some little exciting features like our 10-foot tall topiary dinosaur, which is covering the kids' tree house, which is through this little kind of secret path. The garden is a really nice layering from the house, so it feels like another room of the house.
The front garden has a kind of more Mediterranean feel. It's kind of the sunny side, whereas this garden definitely feels quite lush and tropical, and it's a bit wild as well. I quite like that about it.
It's also 90% of it is evergreen, so it stays like this all year round. A little spot there, we spend a lot of time on summer days hanging out there while the kids are playing in paddling pools and making a mess. So now we're in the kitchen. For budget reasons, we stuck to a not super expensive high street chain kitchen, but to give it that little kind of extra pop, this is made out of a product called jasmonite, which is a polymer modified concrete that has marble, so it makes it white, but it means you can kind of add pops of colour. So we really like the idea of using recycled glass, recycled pebbles, gravel, old chippings of marble. So we made big tiles, smashed them up and then put them in the mould and made the kitchen. Basically, I had a very long lockdown where I couldn't work, so this became my hobby, I guess.
Earlier on when we talked about the layout, you wanted to be able to be cooking here and then have full sight of the house. So you can see out to the front garden from here, you can also see out to the back garden and over the central dining space. So whoever's in here cooking is not isolated from the rest of the house and the family while they're in here.
So this is the primary suite. It's an amazing place to wake up, and a big part of that is this bamboo wall. It feels really private and it feels like we're in nature.
Part of the design for this was to provide a kind of natural privacy screen without having to constantly be opening and closing curtains, and it provides that in a beautiful way in that you're looking out into greenery. This is also the south-facing elevation of the house, and we were aware that we wanted to make sure these bedrooms were properly shaded. So there's an overhang over the facade which protects these windows from high, hot summer sun, and the bamboo also serves as a light shading device, so you get this kind of quite cool dappled sun and soft shading in the bedrooms. And the polycarbonate screens on the outside of that, which enables them to close off the bedroom and provide this completely private but tropical oasis.
That's something we do a lot in winter. We'll close the polycarbonate and then we won't actually use these curtains at all. The bamboo really helps with conditioning the air. It gives us nice fresh air coming through. All the water for the bamboo throughout the house is reused rainwater that we collect in a big tank. Well, actually, one more thing is became a bit of a lockdown hobby, but this shower tray is something that I made before the house was built. It's made with recycled gravel and a product called jasmonite, and every morning I wake up and have a shower. It makes me very happy. This is our spare bedroom, one of the two spare bedrooms. This again got the bamboo screening, the same as our primary suite. So this is one of my children's rooms. The bedrooms are all relatively small and quite simple. We did try and do some things that were kind of space saving and clever uses of space, and this bunk bed is one of them. So Each bedroom has got a bunk bed that is on top of each other, but the wall kind of does an S shape around the bed. So my eldest son sleeps up here, and then in the next bedroom, there's another bunk bed. So they have private rooms with beds, but they're kind of stacked on top of each other, and then they each have like a desk space. So it's just all about maximising space.
We were also aware of flexibility, that maybe in the future these guys might want to make a couple of bigger bedrooms, so all the partitions between bedrooms can all be relatively easily taken down to make bigger bedrooms, or even make more smaller rooms, which means that there's flexibility for Tom and his family.
The scope of the kind of environmental criteria here extends in a number of different ways. So one of them is about how the energy is captured and used. So there's a number of solar panels on the roof that capture energy. They then help power an air source heat pump. And so the pump provides the heating for the space heating and the hot water. There's also a battery linked to the solar panels, and any excess energy that's created from the solar panels gets stored in the battery and is then used at a later point. During the summer months, the house is pretty much off-grid in terms of its energy usage.
We also integrated a number of passive environmental measures into the building, such as the space that we're in now, which cools the house through opening panes at the top of the space, which open when the temperature rises and draws the air through the house, and hot air rises and exits through the windows.
This greenhouse is A-rated in terms of its EPC rating, and is also well below the RIBA 2030 climate challenge in terms of embodied carbon targets.
For me, it was really exciting walking in the first time we came back after Tom and Amandine and their family had moved in. You obviously spend so many hours looking at models and drawings and detailing every corner of a building. Then you spend several months on site, going to site every week, watching it gradually come together. So to then see it finally come to life, people living in it, enjoying it, was really great to see. And it was also really nice to see the kids finding new uses for the spaces that we maybe hadn't imagined, playing hide and seek behind the curtains, running round and round the mezzanine upstairs.
Yeah, I think it's always that kind of coming back into a house that you've spent so long designing and delivering, and then beginning to see that it being used in the way in which A, you thought it might have been, but also B, kind of other ways and kind of other uses and other nooks and crannies kind of that you hadn't necessarily designed as being used in that way. It's always one of the reasons why we do what we do, and that helps us kind of get out of bed in the morning to design the next project.